The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Welcome to this Director's Cut debrief session, where we go behind the scenes to find the story behind the story. So today we're going to be talking about Rick's holiday, sort of. And Rick, you've just come back from a fantastic holiday in the Swiss Alps, where your biggest disappointment, apart from the lack of sleep from your kids, was missing the start of the Belgian football season. And you briefly blamed your bank for this. Can you walk us through what missing the start of the Belgian football season has to do with banking?
Well, yeah, of course. As such, it wasn't the biggest disappointment, but I thought it was a good starting point to talk about a bigger concern we may need to take into account when we talk about specific topics on banking. The reason is there's this goal alert. It's a functionality implemented in my bank app. And for years, that gave me real-time information on the team that would play of my favorite football team. And whenever they made a goal, I could see the replay of that goal again a few minutes after they scored. That also updated me whenever there was a game, because I don't know those things by heart, except when I see my calendar that there's a match to be played at home where I will be going. I don't capture that kind of information. Much stronger in other things, but football, not so much. And this year, that wasn't the case. KBC informed me up front that there was an agreement with the partner and them, not with the partner and many other, like for example, telco providers, for example, either. So in short, there isn't much Belgian football news online right now, except on the owner of the legal rights to publish the game. But there was an expectation. And because in the past I received those updates, I relied on KBC to get those updates. And I was only fully aware of it after missing that first game, so to say, where I got some comments from friends over WhatsApp saying that we scored a goal, that unfortunately, because of that one player, we didn't win the game, etc. And that's when I realized, I didn't get my updates. And rationally speaking, KBC is not to blame. We know that out of the wider context is clearly the partner that isn't much willing to share updates with third-party providers who they haven't signed an agreement or they haven't renewed an agreement just yet. So rationally speaking, I know KBC is probably not to blame. Emotionally speaking, I was relying on that bank platform to get my updates. So that, I think, the key conclusion was that I was very happy that there is a bank that got me emotionally excited about the bank app. On the other hand, it also showed that despite not being responsible, there is an emotional weight, an emotional depth that was created through that partnership. And that is, I think, something that should be remembered in the context of embedded finance, or the other way around, when non-bank functionalities are added in a bank platform, while you can't 100% rely on it because it's not all in your own hands. And that was what I was, in a fun way, trying to explain through that blog. Was the biggest frustration? Probably not, but it was a good starting point to write a fun piece of writing.
So I won't ask how many times you actually get goal alerts from your team. I mean,
depends how much they score.
Yeah, and do they score a lot, Rick?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Who is your team?
KV Mechelen.
Okay.
And they aren't doing that bad so far.
Okay, so the crux of the matter is you had a real emotional connection, which is strange because most people are not emotionally connected with their banks. I certainly don't. I don't care about my bank at all, by and large, so long as they keep my money safe. But KBC's goal alert went far beyond traditional banking. you had said that already.
Yeah.
And in your new book, A New Ethos in Banking, you wrote how digital technology should connect customers more closely with their bank. And so why do you think these non-financial features resonate so strongly? I mean, you could have got goal alerts from anybody. You could have signed up for an RSS news feed. You could have
Yeah.
subscribed to a TV channel.
But I didn't.
But why do you think that these non-financial features bind the customers so strongly to the bank?
Well, I don't bind every customer so strongly.
Yeah.
It's one of the most also negatively commented functionalities where customers can easily say, that's not the kind of innovation I want to pay for. But of course, they're all paying for it as it's one of the functionalities everyone's being offered. So it's also the biggest example. The example that's mostly used by executives from other banks to say, we invest in digital tools that add financial value or that add value to our financial services value proposition, and Goal Alert isn't in there, so we're not doing it. It's too far off banking, on the other hand, and for me, I realized that only after not having it, that tied me emotionally more to my bank. I could have used others as well, but for some reason I used one of KBC, which was convenient. It was easy to use. It was part of a bigger platform. I didn't need to connect to something else for yet another package of new updates, notifications, commercials, whatsoever. With KBC, it's not part of something else.
And pretty much particularly you as an entrepreneur yourself, your bank app is probably something that you check at least once a day. So you're in that platform. Although being out in the Alps, maybe you managed to not check it at least once a day. But I can see the appeal for people who they regularly check their banking app. They get their football updates in there. And
that's not what I mean, because it's more of a standalone feature. Even you, as a non-KBC customer, can use it. You get the updates.
Interesting.
When you want to see the replay, of course, you need to get onto the platform. But it's a Goal Alert platform. It will not automatically redirect you to financial services. Anyhow, so it's not that while I'm checking the match that I'm currently being nudged to do financial services. It's purely that.
Okay, so that was my misunderstanding. I thought that it was like an extension to the app, and it was so.
And honestly, Andrew, another comment: if I were to check my bank account on a daily basis, something's wrong. Because as an entrepreneur, you should be focusing on entrepreneurship, not purely on the financials.
Lesson learned there for entrepreneurs. But one of the things that your story does show is that a bank can build loyalty through unexpected touch points like football highlights. And I mean, there's a lot of brand and reputation association for KBC with the football. And I admit having a rather unreasonable loyalty to my current mobile services provider because they give me weekly freebies like cups of coffee, which are actually really trivial things, and cinema tickets. But actually, if I add up how much free coffee and cinema tickets I get over the year, I'm actually ending up paying zero for my mobile phone contract. So I don't know how they make the money out of it.
So you are consuming all those coffees and cinema tickets?
I am consuming most of them. And enough of them to actually offset. I've got a really, really cheap contract.
Well, are you? Because you're probably also buying more coffee, more cinema tickets than you would have if you didn't get those loyalty. I think.
Do you know how much coffee I drink?
Sorry?
I say, you know how much coffee I drink?
Yeah, but mostly at home.
I do. You're right. And this is going out to go and get the cups of coffee and things like that. So there's probably some
and that's a
commercial
no-brainer. What I think with financial services or telco or whatever, if they want to create the emotional tie, I think that should also go beyond the traditional loyalty. What you're explaining is really loyalty. I give you a discount, and then that means that I nudge you to go shopping somewhere at one of the partners. That's something else than creating a service that's emotionally tying the customer by offering something better than others are doing beyond a discount. And that's what Goal Alert does.
Now, what do you think? Have you got an idea of what other kinds of services you think could create an emotional bond in the future? What else would you like to see from your bank that isn't maybe banking? What kind of non-banking thing?
Yesterday, I had B-Day. So I had 2 small kids.
You're going to have to explain that one.
I'll explain that one. So it was B-Day. With my 2 kids that were at home, we went to Brussels to see Manneken. His small statue, piece 24 hours a day for centuries. He also has a sister, Janneke, a bit further on in Brussels, doing the same thing. And then a bit further on, there's also Zinneke. That's a dog. And so we went to Brussels. I needed a public transport ticket for the train. And normally I go to Brussels for professional reasons. Then I buy my ticket on KBC app, easily integrated. I can select the account to use. It's a simple credit transfer, seamless experience. After a month, I get an invoice with all the tickets plus parking that I used. And it's very convenient. Yesterday, I was to Brussels for private reasons, and I need to use the public transport app. It was kind of a horrible experience. It took me 10 minutes before I properly understood how to do it, which tickets to use, and making sure that I effectively got my ticket. Then the moment there was a control, I couldn't immediately find the ticket, etc. So there again, it's pushing me to use the bank app instead of the public transport app, which is not, it shouldn't be that way. That the partner has a better experience than the one owning it in this case. So that's for me another example. There are plenty of others that are available. It's about providing, or as Karel van Hoeken used to say, I think already back in 2019 on open banking, the new loyalty of banking is to be there whenever the customer needs it. Not more, not less. That is, I think, a very good philosophy for banks at large, making sure that you provide value the moment that the customer needs it. And value can be a very broad range of value. In your case, that could be loyalty, but I hope sooner or later that goes far beyond the loyalty incentives, which I think is rather easy.
They are rather shallow and superficial, I have to admit. Now, in order for these kind of things to work, and including the Goal Alert where you blamed the bank, although you knew that DAZN was the real reason for you not getting your Goal Alerts, them and their licensing. And in your article, you reference Koen Adolf's point that for embedded finance propositions, they have to work seamlessly. And you've just given an example where it's not really embedded finance, but it is an example where the bank was consuming a service from a third party.
Embedding things in finance.
Yeah, embedding things in finance. So due to a licensing issue, that relationship is currently on hold. It may come back. We can't make any forward-looking statements. We don't know. But at the moment, it's the service is suspended. Now, if that was a financial thing, an embedded finance, that might have had more serious ramifications. So what do you think banks should do? Should they really position it and say, if you consume this service, this relies on third-party X, and we can't take any responsibility if third-party X doesn't. That that doesn't sound like it's the kind of a confidence-inspiring thing that I want to hear from my bank. But how should they cover themselves? How should they protect themselves? Um,
I I just use the goal alert as an example. As you
mhm.
say, within the context of embedded finance or embedding anything else, it's the same. I think it's something that we haven't discussed enough at events or on podcasts or whatsoever, and that's the dependence we create when
Yeah,
building something with others. We're also always looking at the opportunities. We are looking at the technological implications and the difficulties of building that. But what we forget to talk about is the dependence we also create. And as long as those partnerships work well, there's no problem at all. The, but that creates a certain emotional depth to the customer if he really likes it. And the moment that partnership breaks down, he doesn't have a fallback.
yeah.
And that's something that banks should anticipate for, and others as well who work with banks, for example. But of course, I'm not a customer experience expert, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask. But I think it is, well, simply thinking about it and anticipating a potential time when that partnership is no longer there, and looking how to fill that gap otherwise, it could be a valuable one. But very often those partnerships are pretty unique as well, so it's very hard to find a reasonable fallback that fulfills all the expectations you have built towards that customer.
And you said you're not a customer experience expert, and perhaps we'll get one of those onto the
Yeah.
show to ask their opinion, but you are a customer. And you quoted in your article one of my favorite quotes from a banking exec that you had brought up, that digital is a dissatisfier, because when things work, nobody notices it. But when things fail, frustration rises, which I think is really that's the key thing. And I don't know as well from a customer perspective. I think you and I, and probably anybody listening or watching to this, are what we would classify as sophisticated customers when it comes to financial services. Geeks is another word to use. And I think we understand that when something is a reliant on a third party relationship, we know rationally that we're not going to blame the bank. And if I think of my current banking relationship, they've offered a service which is common in a lot of banks, where you can now, instead of just saving your money, you can invest your money. And they make it really, really blatant in there, saying, if you choose this to invest your money, this is via a third-party service. And then it gives you a whole lot of terms and conditions, and it's all about the third party and the risks and the liabilities and all of that about the third party. Now, you and I would take one look at that and go, yeah, we understand. We understand the implication. It's not you, Mr. Bank, that's giving us this service. And therefore, if something goes wrong, we're not going to blame you. We understood the risks when we did it. But the average customer is just going to click on. They're not going to read those. They're just going to go, yeah, I want to invest my money.
Depends how
And,
big the emotional tie is.
and when that goes wrong, they are going to blame their
Yeah.
bank. So you're right. I don't have an answer to it. But one of the threads that I want to pick on is last week I'd posted about the agentic AI and preparing for non-human customers. And one of the things that we had covered there was most people in the future, or many people in the future, might instruct an AI to go off and get them secure them financial services. And those AIs are going to be incredibly rational, and they're just going to be looking for the best interest rate and the cheapest loan rate and that kind of a thing, the biggest protection for the money. However, one of the things that we didn't have an answer for was, so how are banks going to differentiate in the future? Do you think that these kind of a non-banking added value services, the services that go beyond banking, might become key differentiators to attract and retain customers in the future, even perhaps in a world of agentic AI, because it will go, hold on, Bank A and Bank B offer exactly the same table stake services, but Bank B has got all of these other things. And I know you really like Mechelen Football Club, so therefore I'm going to select Bank B on your behalf because that aligns more with you. Do you think that that might become a factor in the future?
That
More of a
question
factor.
sounds like a question and an answer, and not the right way in keeping these videos short, my friend. So essentially, the question was, do you think that banking will be beyond banking in the future?
Yeah, if you want to put it that way.
For some banks it will, for others it will not. It depends what their DNA, digital DNA is, and how they want to position themselves towards the customer. As I said, also from a consumer point of view, quite a few may not be triggered by this goal alert feature because it doesn't bring them any value. As such, they may not be interested in the idea of paying a fee that includes that kind of services because they have been sponsoring that kind of innovations. These people may just look for something else simply because this bank has these beyond banking features. So it will depend. I think, I hope we'll see a higher diversity of financial institutions in the future. For one reason, because they understand that that identity and that DNA and culture is key to position themselves separately from the rest. But maybe also because some banks will simply be unable, as they already are in a way, unable to keep up with digital transformation of front runners. And that banks will be going even more in the future on different speeds when it comes to digitization. And maybe that is not a bad thing because you see the same at the customer end, customers not being interested in the most digital features, etc. So who knows? Maybe you're right, maybe you're not. I see a future for both business propositions. One going very beyond banking and being very successfully at it. Others explicitly saying we're not doing that. We invest in something else that brings different kind of value and being very successful in that as well.
So to wrap it up, if you could give one piece of advice to bank executives about the future of customer expectations based on your experience, what would it be?
Make sure that you also think critically about what's next in a future where the partnership ends up being a breakup. At least think about that scenario and make sure that you anticipate how that loss can be communicated, maybe even compensated. That entirely depends on the proposition that's being lost and the value that's being created. But don't just think about the customer experience of implementing it, but maybe also about the customer experience of killing it off. That would be, in this specific case, my advice. And make sure that you talk to customer experience experts instead of me. I was just experiencing the emotional tie, and it's interesting that I only realized that after losing it. And that's also why I refer to digital as a dissatisfier. I was emotionally tied to it, apparently, but I didn't feel it until I lost it.
Until you lost it. Good feedback from a customer.
Yep.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye.